I wrestled with today's readings, and it reminded me of Jacob fighting with God at Jabbok. Sometimes we have to struggle with God, with the Bible, with our church. Today, first we hear a beautiful account of a feast prepared for us by God in Isaiah. Then, St. Paul's heartening account of faith that endures in all circumstances. And then there's the Gospel, a parable of a generous invitation to a feast, which some ignore, and those who refuse are punished in a really gruesome ways. And a last verse that tops it. Many are invited, but few are chosen. What are we to do with that? How can we soften the meaning of this verse? Sure, we could ignore it. We could just take the shorter version of this reading and pretend that these hard-hitting verses are not there at all. But I suspect that is not how we discover a God who invites us to take off a veil, an intransparency that covers the true nature of things. We have to stick with the text. We have to stick with it with all our questions. We have to struggle. And there we know that somewhere in there, God is there to be discovered. To stick with it is a feeling that I know well. My partner and I are asked all the time, why do we stick with this Catholic Church? Isn't it a horrible place to be a same-sex couple? Sometimes that's true. And we cannot gloss over these moments, these parts of our experience with our church that make it painful. But in the same way, we also cannot deny that a church is a life-giving place of beautiful encounters, of really transformative experiences. And I, as someone who has converted to Catholicism, have really been invited to this feast, to the table of the Eucharist, to the community of the church. And I cannot just walk away from that. I imagine that not only LGBTQ Catholics, but many of us feel that sometimes the church is a place we are very well fed, and sometimes it's a place where we go hungry. St. Paul in today's second reading tells us that we can bear that when we are centered on God, centered on the one who strengthens us in all circumstances. I think St. Paul has another lesson for us. He shows us that just like him, it helps us when somebody notices, when somebody shares in our distress. A couple months ago, Germany debated and ultimately approved a law allowing equal marriage. And in that time, I think what stung me the most from the church officials were not the position of defending a traditional view of a family. After all, I know from other countries that the debate as it took place in Germany was comparably quite polite and open and really constructive. But what stung me was one official who declared that discussing same-sex marriage so much is really not appropriate because it is a marginal issue that does not deserve so much attention. That hurt. Because I think this sums up so clearly what many LGBTQ persons and families and many others experience in our church. This feeling of being unimportant, of being overseen, of being expendable. We are reduced to a hotly debated issue, and the humanity of us goes lost in this process. Under the defense of a doctrine, the lived experience of people for whom getting married is a major life experience, a major decision that shapes their life, that is lost. What a different positive experience I've made with my family, our friends, with the pastoral workers in our church and in our diocese who have taken the time to get to know me and my partner, and who have really shared in our joys and in our distress. There together we have a glimpse of a heavenly feast where the veil is taken off and we see that we are all children of God. We are all fed by God's love. A pastoral worker recently told me, in the church I serve, there has to be place for everyone to come as they are, without having to hide or distort any part of themselves. That is our church at its best, and that is a glimpse of heaven on earth. I cannot tell you that I am fully reconciled with today's reading, or with the church as it is today. I can only invite you to wrestle with it, and to stick with it, and to use your faith to guide you, so that you accept the invitation to this feast, and accept it despite not being able to understand every detail of the picture, every word of the text. It is an encounter, and our desire to know the distress of each other will help us to arrive at this heavenly feast. I leave you with two movements from a prayer by a German Jesuit by the name of Petra. My life is a bowl, ready to receive and ready to give. God, make stronger what brings me closer to you, and help me recognize what takes me away from you. Help me to bear the tension between what is and what is not yet, between desire and fulfillment. Amen.